Welcome back, focused learners. In today's explainer, we're taking a journey back through the centuries to look at a literal collision of cultures. We're unpacking the fascinating chapter on Indo-Islamic architecture, looking closely at how two completely distinct traditions smashed together and then combined to create some of the most breathtaking, world-renowned structures that we still marvel at today. I mean, just imagine what happens when two totally different architectural worlds meet face to face. On one side, you've got the indigenous traditions of the Indian subcontinent. On the other, brand new techniques brought in by Muslim merchants, traders, and conquerors over hundreds of years. This monumental shift wasn't just about changing styles, though. It actually set up a massive engineering problem that these builders had to figure out how to solve together. Here's our roadmap for today's explainer. First, a meeting of cultures. Second, engineering the Arcuate form. Third, the art of decoration. Fourth, forts and seats of power. And finally, the Taj Mahal Apogee. Okay, let's dive into this with Section 1, a meeting of cultures. So right off the bat, there's this stark contrast between two very different artistic and religious ideologies. Historically, Hindu builders saw manifestations of God everywhere, so they naturally adorned their surfaces with vibrant living sculptures. Muslim builders, on the other hand, centered on the concept of one God. They were forbidden to replicate living forms, so instead they developed these stunningly intricate designs based on arabesque, geometry, and calligraphy. Figuring out how to blend these two completely different visual languages, well, that's the true essence of Indo-Islamic architecture. And by the early 13th century, under the Delhi Sultanate, you really start to see these cultures visibly blending. Take the Qutb Minar, for example. It's this monumental early showcase of these mixed techniques. You can literally see this unique combination of structural ideas and stylized shapes coming to life. It was this continuous, ongoing process of acceptance, rejection, and modification that eventually evolved into what we now call Indo-Islamic architecture. Which leads us to Section 2, engineering the Arcuate form. And this brilliantly illustrates the core issue. To get these incredible new buildings to actually stand up, they needed a total structural evolution. See, India was already highly familiar with trabeation. That's using brackets, pillars, and lintels to support flat roofs, or really shallow domes. But here's the catch. Those wooden or stone lintels just couldn't bear massive top weight. Enter the Arcuate form. This used true arches made of interlocking blocks called voussoirs, locked in with keystones. This was a total game changer. It meant they could finally support the crushing weight of these massive new domes without completely cluttering the floor below with pillars. But think about this for a second. How do you actually transition from a square room to a heavy, perfectly round dome overhead? Well, the brilliant solution was the squinch. Basically, it's an arch spanning the corners of a square chamber. Working alongside structures called pendentives, this ingenious architectural breakthrough took all that massive weight and transferred it straight down into the walls. The results? The interiors were left wonderfully free and open for large congregations. Section 3, the art of decoration. So once the heavy engineering was mastered, we see an absolute artistic explosion. Builders began softening these imposing stone structures with incredibly rich sensory decorations drawn from both traditions. Just picture it. The inner curves of the arches were delicately lined with lotus bud fringes. The walls were covered with carvings of cypress and chinar trees, intermingled with beautiful flowing calligraphy. And to add a spectacular pop of color, from the 14th century onwards, they started surfacing walls and domes with brilliant blue, turquoise, green, and yellow tiles. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is this staggering level of detail when you zoom in. Notice the painstaking Pietradura inlay work and those intricate mosaic designs framing the arches. Then compare that to the delicate chhatri, that beautiful little cupola resting on pillars. The high relief carving gives the stone this lifelike, almost three-dimensional look. Add in a profuse use of jollies, which are those carved stone lattices, and the overall artistic effect is simply stunning. Section 4, forts and seats of power. Now, as much as we've talked about religion and art, survival and absolute sovereignty were just as crucial. Building monumental forts was an absolute necessity in medieval times. We're talking about immense, staggeringly complex structures like Chittor, Gwalior, Daulatabad, and Golconda. Featuring these massive embattlements and concentric outer walls, they literally forced enemy armies to breach them stage by grueling stage just to get inside. Because back then, if a fort fell, the ruler lost their complete power. So these structures weren't just buildings. They were the ultimate physical embodiment of authority.
Let's move to and see how this builds into Section 5, the Taj Mahal Apogee.
Because all of this incredible synthesis builds to one singular, breathtaking climax, the Taj Mahal, built in Agra by Shah Jahan as a mausoleum for his deceased wife, Mumtaz Mahal. This structure represents the absolute peak, the apogee of the evolutionary architectural process in medieval India. It perfectly blends the engineering, the decoration, and that cross-cultural synthesis into one flawless monument. And to achieve this level of unmatched perfection, the sheer scale of the labor force required was staggering. It took an army of 20,000 specialized workers to execute this architectural vision. On top of that, it required an immense commitment of time. Starting in 1632, those 20,000 workers toiled day in and day out for nearly 20 years to finally complete this masterpiece. The end result is a perfectly orderly plan with mind-blowing symmetry. It's often been described so poetically, noting, quote, the ethereal quality marble has lent to it and the pure outline of the tomb silhouetted against the sky. Placed perfectly within a charbagh, a traditional square-walled garden, the natural patina of the marble actually shifts the Taj's hues depending on the time of day and night. It's just magic. Which brings us to our final thought for today. How does a monument like the Taj Mahal truly symbolize the perfection of a blended culture? By tracing this incredible journey from two starkly distinct philosophies all the way to a single, unified masterpiece of engineering and art, this architecture proves something profound. It shows us that when different worlds collaborate, they can literally build the impossible. I really hope this explainer has given you a fresh perspective on these incredible monuments and leaves you eager to explore even more of this rich history.